Welcome back to Stories by You. To support the channel, please subscribe, hit that notification button, and share this video. Today's story is about long COVID awareness and how it impacted our special guest today, Sonia. And she currently lives in Boulder, California, located in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and with her amazing husband, John, and their wonderful cats. She has two, Shabby and Carter, and their cute dog, Bear. Sonia loves theater. She loves having dinner parties. She loves going swimming in the creek with friends and spending time with her nieces, Gabby and Gianna. Before she moved to Boulder, California, I always get that mixed.
That's okay. It's Boulder Creek.
Creek, yes. And she lived in San Jose, where she spent a lot of her time capturing and making sure to rescue street cats. And she's originally from Washington, D.C. area. We welcome Sonia to our show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Also, how COVID, how was the life before COVID?
Life before COVID, I was very active. I love to go hiking. I love to exercise. I like to spend time with my friends. I love to do theater. I was a very go, go, go type of person. My husband used to say, "Do you have a stop button?" I was just always doing things, and I was active, and I loved life. I loved traveling and having little adventures and spending time with my nieces, Gianna and Gabby, and just really living life to the fullest. That was my life before COVID.
About when did you get COVID and how many times?
I've only had COVID once, and I got it in October of 2021. So I've had it for about 2 years now.
Also, what were some of the symptoms, Sonia, when you caught COVID? Can you explain some of them?
Yeah, so when I had the initial infection, at first I thought I had a cold, so just stuffy, sore throat. And then I lost taste and smell, and I knew, okay, I have COVID. So I went to the doctor to get tested, and then I developed other symptoms like shortness of breath. I had really bad fatigue, muscle aches, and then I also had a lot of chest pain. But at that point, that hadn't been really a typical symptom of COVID. So the doctors were really sure what to do with that, but the chest pain got very, very intense for me during the acute infection.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your chest pain?
Yeah, it was so intense. They ended up having to put me on hydrocodone for the pain. And at night, I was laying out clothes, and my husband said, "What are you doing? Are you laying out clothes in case we have to go to the hospital in the middle of the night?" And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm afraid I'm either going to have a heart attack or I'm going to stop breathing." But because we live in the mountains, the hospital is far away. It takes an ambulance a long time to get to the house. And so I wanted to have a plan in place so that if something really bad happened, I could get medical care so I wouldn't die.
Of course. And thank you to Jesus that you are with us.
Yes.
Grateful that we have this opportunity to, put out awareness. And I appreciate this very much. So tell us some of your symptoms for the long COVID. I know you had the one before the infection, but what happened afterwards?
Yeah. So with long COVID, I had shortness of breath. I have a lot of cognitive issues. I developed an elevated heart rate, brain fog. This is where like the memory problems start coming in. And fatigue. That's what I'm forgetting. The fatigue has been absolutely debilitating. And then I've had some other symptoms like heart palpitations. I've just recently started developing neuropathy. I had a cough with the initial infection, which eventually went away. And then some things cycle, like for 3 months, I would have really bad headaches and then that would go away. So there were some things that would come and go, like the heart palpitations were for 3 months and then they would go away. But the fatigue and the brain fog have lasted the entire time, and they've just gotten progressively worse, especially the brain fog.
The brain fog. Yeah, I wanted to touch on the brain fog. Can you give us examples?
Yeah, it started with I was having a hard time spelling words, which had never been an issue before. And then I would be talking and I used to give a lot of presentations and I was used to speaking in front of people. And now all of a sudden I would be talking and I wouldn't have words to articulate what I was trying to say. My mind would go blank mid-sentence. Um, Sometimes if I was really fatigued, like when I was flying somewhere, I needed help with my ticket and I went to the ticket counter and the lady said, "Where are you coming from?" And I didn't know. I just spent a week in the DC area and I had no idea where I had just been. My brain just completely went blank on me, which was really scary. And then I started having memory problems with it. Um, I'm currently at the Aviv Clinic getting treatment for long COVID. And when my husband took me to the airport, uh, I said, "Hey, like we've just been to the airport recently." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, I don't, I don't know why." And he said, "Well, we picked up your friends from the airport." And I said, "My friends?" And he said, "Yeah, your friends from the East Coast. We picked them up and you went to Tahoe with them." And then it all came back to me. But it really scared me because, we live in the mountains. So we drove 45 minutes to the airport to pick them up, 45 minutes home talking in the car with them. Then I drove 4.5 hours to Tahoe with them, spent a week there with them, 4.5 hours back. And the going to the airport didn't trigger any of those memories. That really scared me because before COVID, I had an amazing memory. I was quick on my feet, I was sharp, and now all of that had gone away. Um, and so I think that was just a really scary moment for me and my husband.
I'm sure it's very emotional when you have to. Does this make you emotional talking through this when it brings back memory?
For me, it gets emotional when I think about how it affected my marriage and how much my husband has helped me and how much I've missed out on my life. That's when it really, I'm used to the symptoms. I haven't adjusted to the fact that I've lost 2 years of my life.
Yes, and
That's when it starts to get hurtful.
that's good to tell me that because that was our next thing to talk about. You and I have a conversation. How did this infection impacted your life? And I know you and I were talking about you playing with your nieces.
Mhm.
Sometimes you couldn't. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my niece, Gabby, who's also my goddaughter, is like one of the greatest gifts of my life ever. And I remember going to her second birthday party, and it was outside, and everybody was getting to play with her, and everyone's running around. And my husband's taking her to the swings, and I couldn't do any of that. I just had to sit or just like help unwrap the cupcakes and put out the food. And it was so painful for me to watch everybody play with her and to just sit on the sidelines and just wonder, like, how much am I really going to get to participate in her life? And then I remember like the next year, we just met up at a playground and it was more of a contained area. So I was playing with her at the slide and things. And it wasn't for that long, but I could barely get to the car afterwards. And then I had a 3-week crash for the small amount of time I did play with her. And I just thought, am I going to be sidelined in her life for the rest of my life? Am I not going to be able to participate and do the things that I want to do that make me a good auntie? And that's a really hard thing to try to process because I love her so much and I want to be involved in her life. And I don't want to sit and watch everybody else play with her and not be the one to pick her up and put her on the swing set.
Do you think she understands that she can feel something is wrong?
She's so little, I don't think she notices. But what I do is I try to do other things to make up for it so that I can still be a part of her life. So, like, I can put her down for her bedtime routine and read her stories. I send her videos of me reading her books or just videos of me saying hi so that I'm a constant part of her life, but that requires very little energy on my part. So, what she'll remember that I was always there. Even if I wasn't the one doing all the active stuff, I was still a constant part of her life. And so I think because she's so little, she's not going to differentiate between what I could and couldn't do. She'll just know Auntie Sonia was always around or always a part of her life.
She'll sense it. I mean, children are very smart. So, and not only that, the people are around her like can see that and the stuff that you're doing and the courage and everything that's happening with you, your strength is coming from God. You're so strong. I don't know the courage that you have to even record this and be here. to spread awareness. That's a lot. So I have to give you that.
Thank you. I think it's important that people know that long haul COVID really strips you of your ability to live your life. It's very crippling. You spend so much of your time recovering from using your energy and so much time trying to rest to build up energy, but you're actually sidelined. You're watching life go by and you don't really get to participate. And it's a form of grief and it's really painful. And somebody described it once. It's like you and your spouse have to go to 100 funerals because you have to let go of all the aspects of who you are that you don't get to be anymore. And that's a really hard way to live. And I think if people understand that people with long haul COVID are not just dealing with a medical issue, but they're dealing with grief and losing a huge part of their life. We went from active and exercising. Some people can barely walk, and I think it's really important that people understand what long haul COVID really looks like.
Yeah, now that you're mentioning that, before we get to talking more about awareness and how people can actually understand, not everyone's able to like move forward. They might have just got, just the minor symptoms and moved on, but it impacted so many people's lives. Some in the hospital never got to come home.
Yeah.
Some are in your position, they're still dealing with that after 2 years. So kindness definitely needs to take place. I think we're missing that. So I'm glad that you're here to talk through it, and hopefully people can understand it from your standpoint. But I do want to understand a little bit more about, has anything helped you post your infection, post-infection?
Yeah. So two things that have helped so far. One was low dose naltrexone. It doesn't give you energy, but it helps you sustain the energy that you have. And I noticed that if I upped the dose after I had crashed, it could help me come out of a crash a little quicker. And then it would also help with brain fog. So the brain fog wasn't as bad because I was working part-time. And so I still had to be able to function. And then I used a soft hyperbaric oxygen chamber that I found through a functional doctor. And I had shortness of breath every time I would bend over. And doing 21-hour sessions in his hyperbaric soft chamber completely eliminated that. And it was interesting because a cardiologist that I saw, when I was asking him about that, he just said, well, it's because you're out of shape. Well, I knew I wasn't so out of shape that I couldn't put my shoes on, right, without getting short of breath. And later I talked to a doctor who explained what was actually happening with my lungs and why that hyperbaric chamber helped me, but it helped me immensely. And now I'm at a clinic that treats long COVID, even though everyone says there isn't a cure, there actually is a treatment out there. And I'm a third of the way through, and they've had really great success with long haulers. So I'm very hopeful that this is going to help me get my life back.
I mean, let's talk about that. I know, thank you for explaining about the post-infection and what has helped you, and also the facility that you found. I know you and I talked about this, but maybe the audience need to understand.
Yeah.
How did you find the facility, like your own research? How did that come about? That's a great story that you told me. I like to.
Yeah. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos about long COVID to understand like what is happening to my body. And a news clip popped up, and there was a woman on there, and she was sharing her story about how long haul COVID had destroyed her life. And she found this clinic, and it had completely changed everything. She got her life back. She went from having trouble walking to being able to exercise again. And so I thought, okay, I need to check this out because my long haul COVID specialist said to me, I don't know if you'll ever get better. And I couldn't live with that. So then I reached out to the clinic, had a consultation with one of their doctors. And he said, look, you're too young to live like this. We've had great success with our long haulers, and we think we can give you your life back. And I've met and talked to other long haulers who went through the program. Everybody was saying the same thing. I got my life back. I met another woman just today who came in walking with a cane, who said, hey, I'm going to give you my number. I want to stay in touch, but I got to go because I'm going on a bike ride with my husband.
Nice.
And I was like, already? So they've just had such great success. I feel like they offer help and hope. And a lot of long haulers don't have hope right now. And so I thought I have to try it. It's expensive. It's a long treatment program, but I had to get my life back. And there's not a lot out there that offers that for long haulers. So I was extremely excited to discover this place. And
Very
I just want to say it's called Aviv, A-V-I-V.
I was gonna ask you, share the name. Perfect. So when it comes to your memory, I give you, it's very good. Also your resilience. I have to tell you, Sonia, your resilience to have the courage, continue to fight for yourself. And I think that's really important. We have to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I know you have the support of your husband and there are people around you that care about you and love you, but I think at the end it comes down to our own, taking care of ourselves and advocating.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about before you found the facility, what were your experiences with the doctors? Any your primaries, any of the doctors that you saw?
Yeah. So my primary care doctor, for me, she was a miracle because she knew I had long COVID. She believed me. I hear so many long haulers say my doctors don't believe me. She believed me and she stood by me the entire way. And she would even do research and say, hey, I read this article or I learned about this. She really tried to help me. I had a rheumatologist that was really helpful. It's challenging because long haul COVID is so new for doctors. So to be fair to them, there's so much they don't know. It's hard sometimes to get a diagnosis because at first they were thinking, does she have fibromyalgia? And then I read a Italian study that called it fibro COVID, where the symptoms overlap so much that it's hard to tell the difference between the two. So they were saying a lot of long haul patients get diagnosed with fibromyalgia when it's actually long COVID. I did have some experiences with doctors who were kind of dismissive, or because they didn't understand it, they just either dismissed me or gave me erroneous advice. Um, One doctor told me, I know you haven't exercised, and I can't exercise. For 2 years, I have not been able to exercise because the fatigue is so debilitating and it can cause a crash. And a crash means you can't function at all. Normal day things become incredibly difficult or impossible, like taking a shower, cooking, driving. And she was like, well, you just need to push through it and you need to just force yourself to take walks, which is terrible advice. Anyone that knows anything about fatigue or chronic fatigue, you cannot push yourself. You will crash, and that's a setback. And, my philosophy is if you don't know what you're talking about, then don't give advice. If you're a doctor, but it's not your specialty, don't put advice out there that could actually do more harm than good. I had the one doctor who's like, well, you're out of shape. That's why you're short of breath when you bend over. And he was completely wrong. There was actually a medical explanation. He meant well, but he was wrong. So I think you get a myriad of stuff. I know a lot of women, myself included, with long COVID, were told, well, you're in menopause.
Yes.
Okay, well, menopause doesn't explain the heart palpitations or the shortness of breath or a lot of the other symptoms that I had. It only explained night sweats. It would be fair to say, let's rule out menopause, but it's not fair to dismiss me and say, well, it's just menopause. And it turns out it wasn't. And another long hauler I talked to said her doctor told her it's menopause. And she was like, I went through that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So you just get a myriad of stuff.
It's crazy. I mean, having to like hear all of this from you, a lot of other people that are dealing with COVID and had similar things. And even the doctors themselves say there's not enough research
Mhm.
that we could say. So really, I don't think a lot of doctors themselves know
They don't.
what's going on with long COVID. And come down the road, we're going to hear a lot more of the impact to the organs, like you were saying about the brain and the organs. And I understand a lot of times because you're in this condition, you're okay to talk about it because it's actually happening to you. But I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it because of the fear that gives anxiety. And I don't want to know about it. I understand that. No one wants to hear negative things, but I think awareness and information is power, and
Mhm.
information can help us save lives and help each other out. So again, it goes back to kudos to you for coming forth with this information. And
Yeah.
I think one last thing that I did wanted to ask, you know, as far as awareness and encouragement, if
Mhm.
you have to like look in right now, we're all looking in the camera. If there's people that are watching, anything that you can just tell our audience, what would it be?
So in terms of awareness, I would say respect people's boundaries. Everybody is going through their own things, and you don't know what everyone's struggles are. Some people wear masks. That's okay. Respect that. Some people can't get a vaccination or booster. Respect that. At the end of the day, we need to stop looking at things through an agenda or a political lens and treat people as human beings. When I talk about what I've been through with long COVID and people try to take it down a political lane, I just stop them and say, you know what? This is my story. I'm a person and I'm hurting, and this isn't about politics. And as my friend, I just need some support. Because we have to go back to the fact that this is about human beings, and long haulers, we're going through a nightmare right now. And it doesn't matter what your politics are, like you can still empathize with someone as a human being. And so I would say that in terms of awareness is we just need to respect where other people are at. This isn't the time for judgment, it's the time for compassion. In terms of encouragement, I would say to other long haulers, you're not alone. There are millions of us. I know that a lot of long haulers say, I haven't met another long hauler, but there are millions of us, and there is treatment. I would also say one thing about COVID that a lot of people might not understand is it's different from other viruses because it gets into the brain. And so a lot of the things that people are dismissing about you are real because it has changed things in your brain. A symptom, not a result of COVID, but a symptom of COVID is anxiety and depression because of the areas of your brain that were impacted by COVID. Your cognitive issues, your memory issues, the word finding issues, the things that people might dismiss as, you know, like you're crazy or you're not handling it well, are actually cognitive problems caused by the fact that COVID got into your brain. And this is something we haven't dealt with other viruses. So these things are real and they can be explained by certain brain scans that I've had done on myself, and I can actually see the damage COVID has done. So it doesn't matter if other people believe you or not. It's real. We have the science to show it. We have the science to prove it. You're not alone. Hang in there. Those of us that have gone through treatment and have gotten better are moving forward and trying to find a way to make it easier for you to get treatment. So just know that we're coming back for you. Hang in there.
Yes, great advice. Very good advice. And I think, Sonia, with everything we talked about just recently, there is a story you told me. So I always like to close with something.
Yeah.
Your favorite thing during this troubled times. There's always something great that comes out of, even though we're dealing with something, or challenges, or physical health, mental health. Tell me about the savior in your life. Tell me about the 10-year-old girl.
Yes. So I have a 10-year-old little girl in my life who would come to my house to hang out. And it was the greatest little miracle for me. I actually call her my little miracle friend because I had to rest all the time. And it's isolating and it's boring and I hated it. And I remember a few weeks earlier, God speaking to me saying, like, you don't necessarily have your health, but you still have a purpose. And I felt like she was part of my purpose because she was going through some stuff in her life. And she felt like hanging out at my place was a great place to be. And it's a safe place. And she loved it. And her mom was on board with it. And she benefited from it, but I benefited from it. And it was this great little friendship that we had. And I've now like officially considered myself her auntie, and she's going along with it. And it was just such a miracle that we both came into each other's lives when we both needed somebody. And it gave me the sense of purpose. And we would hang out and watch Disney movies and have snacks together and talk about her day and what's going on in her life. And I knew that she was having some issues with anxiety, so it was really good for her, but it was such a blessing for me. And I just love that God brought us both together at that same time. And I think it's really important when you're going through something really, really difficult, that if you have the ability, because you have to do it within your own limitations, and you have the energy, if you can reach out and give to somebody else in the midst of your own pain and heartache, and you can spread some joy and happiness, it's actually going to come back to you. And that's a really good way to get out of despair or a feeling of depression. It's not a cure. And I'm all for antidepressants, but it is a way to kind of get you out of the funk by giving happiness away. Happiness comes back to you.
Absolutely. Great feedback. I love that story. I'm not gonna forget that story. It's amazing. Thank you so much again for being here. We would love for you to come back after your treatment, if possible.
Yes.
And you can talk us through it when you're able to get back on the bicycle and go for your marathons and enjoy your life with your husband and your nieces and your 2 cats and your dog. I just want to give you all my prayer, all my praise really for your friendship too.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you all for watching again. Please don't forget to subscribe. If there's anyone that's dealing with long COVID and they could find benefits to watching this and get in touch with Sonia, I'd be happy to do that. She has a Circle of Long COVID group that she can also get you in touch with. So please let us know. And again, thank you so much for being here and have a great day. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.